Alright guys, so we're gonna talk about how ChatGPT said that like my vocabulary, my Japanese surpassed most natives. And the thing is that even for me right now, like I still don't feel fully satisfied with my Japanese. Despite me like really going hardcore, immersing 6 hours a day, sometimes 8 hours if I had it on the weekends. I still like in doing that over the course of like years. I started to learn Japanese during quarantine in 2020, so it's almost close to 5 years now since I started to learn Japanese. Um, but of course, like the first 2.5 years were done like diligently, and in the last remaining 2 years after that was like very light. I was focusing on other things, but I was still like immersing in Japanese here and there. But in terms of like the words I'm learning, yeah, guys, it's actually insane. Because now the only thing that challenges me now is like super hard anime. Right. I mean, so like my mom is a native speaker of Japanese, and every time I show her a word I'm learning, she most of the time like jichuhaku, she doesn't know it. Just she doesn't know it. Like I'm at a point now where like even I've surpassed my mom in terms of kanji. Like I know more kanji than my mom because like for me like if I were to point like a number, there's like around 2,000 joyo kanji. For me like I know roughly like probably 3,000 kanji, right? And part of this was basically me immersing a lot, me doing a ton of reading, right? Like when you just learn new words, like and just keep learning words and words and words and words, what's gonna eventually happen is like you're just gonna end up having a huge vocabulary, and you're gonna be able to know all this kanji. So I wasn't focused on learning new kanji. I was just focused on learning new words, and the high kanji amount, like that, like, the extremely high level of kanji, was a byproduct of me learning new words, right? Which came through as a byproduct of reading, of immersing. So that's the thing, guys. Just never neglect the immersion, right? I mean, it's crazy because like what I've done, like what takes most native speakers 13 years to do, I did in 2 years plus more, which is insane. Like it takes most native speakers to learn how to read, right? All 2,000 Joyo kanji. It takes them like 13 years, which is freaking insane, right? When like I was just literally like watching anime and like immersing in light novels, and I was able to reach that same amount in like 2 years, and partially had to do with SRS, Anki. That's a freaking hack, guys. Because here's the thing, like even though immersion can get you really far, even though if you do like a ton of reading, like yes, you'll be able to learn like the kanji like that, but Anki is like game changer because when you learn a new word and there's like a kanji you don't know, right? Like, let's say it's like a super obscure kanji. If you put it into Anki, you will learn how to read that. Like eventually, like that's how I'm able to learn how to read these like super obscure words that have hard kanji that even natives can't read. Is because like I did Anki. The Anki like helped me do it. So that's why like combining immersion with Anki is like one of the most effective ways to learn language, and that's kind of like why I'm able to achieve a vocabulary at least higher than most native speakers. You know, now in terms of my output, it's not native because it's like, well, when you don't practice the language, it's like how do you expect to be native, right? It's like for me to really be like native in terms of pronunciation and in expression. Well, like I think my accent is pretty much almost perfect. It's pretty much like perfect at that point. Like my accent and pitch accent, it's like perfect already because like I'm able to hear it. My only obstacle is like okay, learning how to output it, like learning how to basically um express myself in talking. Because if I were to do a YouTube video right now and completely in Japanese, even if my Japanese vocabulary is higher than my English vocabulary, I'm able to use what I know in English more effectively because I've practiced speaking, right? I made a ton of YouTube videos. I'm a native speaker of English. So I already had like a ton of opportunities to talk and speak in English, but not the same for Japanese, right? Even though my vocabulary in Japanese surpasses my native language, that doesn't matter because it's like I haven't practiced using what I already know. But if I were to spend like 2 years in Japan, then my Japanese might actually improve my English. It might surpass my English. That's the thing. Like that's crazy thing. That's a crazy thing to think about is that if I were to output enough in Japanese with the already ability I have, it has the potential to surpass my English in terms of competency, in terms of like being able to like express formal, phrases and speak in a very educated, sophisticated manner, right? It might even surpass my English like this, right? I mean, of course, I mean, like it's already there, but it's like I just need to output more. But that's like pretty much the only part that's not native. But in terms of everything else, like in terms of my reading comprehension, like it's basically surpassed most natives at this point, or most natives that don't read. So if you're to compare me to a native speaker that already reads a lot, then this native speaker will be better because this native speaker already knows all those like domain specific vocabularies that come up in anime, right? But it's like for me, like I've surpassed at least like the most of the native speakers that don't consume or read a lot or like don't go to education, don't go to universities, right? But like that's the thing, guys. Like it's crazy how what I basically did was like I just like basically showed ChatGPT. Okay, look, these are like the words I'm learning. So basically, this is how I did it, right? I basically just told ChatGPT this prompt. I was like, okay, I want you to guess my vocabulary range based off the words that I'm giving you. These are the words I'm learning. And what I basically did was like, I just basically inputted a bunch of words that I had in my Anki deck that I was learning, and I just basically put it into ChatGPT and just listed out all the words that I was learning. And then it came out to that ChatGPT roughly estimated my vocabulary to be around like 25,000 to 30,000. Guys, like that's freaking insane. 25,000 to 30,000 words. Like it was like the words I was learning what basically is within that range, which is actually insane. And I did a little bit more research in comparison to other languages. Like most other languages don't even reach this level of vocabulary. Like even like the hardest French literature, it would only cap out at like 20,000 words that you need to know. Now maybe for English, it'd be a little different because like English is actually a hard language. Believe it or not, because there's a lot of synonyms, right? Because I actually looked up the comparison of like if you wanted to master spoken Japanese, if you wanted to master French conversational, and you wanted to master like spoken English. So spoken French and spoken English, in terms of the amount of vocabulary required to master it, is actually doubled. Like you need to know double the words in English and French. So because like it seems like in French, first of all, English, like a lot of English people have borrowed words from French, right? So a lot of French words are already in English, but they still have their English Germanic counterpart, right? So for example, words like big, grande. So grand, is a French word that came from France, but English didn't omit the big or humongous or enormous, right? Those words they still left in English, but they basically just added in new words from French. So there's a lot of synonyms like big, grand, like colossal, like all these words here, right? They're just basically like synonyms of each other, right? And that's why if you want to master English vocabulary, English spoken language, I'm talking, you need to know you need to have like a vocabulary of like 20,000, right? That's probably where my vocabulary is that in English. It's probably around like 20,000. Whereas like with French, if you want to master spoken language, you're gonna need to know like 10,000, 12,000 words, right? So it's a lot less than English. So that's like interesting that depending on what language you're learning, the amount of vocab required to master a certain domain is actually different. So like if you want to master anime Japanese, like where I'm at right now, like you need to know like even more than any other language, like 30,000 words, So that's very interesting. And that's why it's partially why I have such a high vocabulary, is because I'm like literally like learning from all these obscure light novels. Like, I'm reading Classroom Elite, and even like a light novel like Classroom Elite that's like easy to understand with straightforward writing, it still has like a lot of words that natives wouldn't even know, or like a lot of words that natives wouldn't know off the bat. There's a lot of expressions like shiraha no yao tatsu, or like kankou reoshiku, or like freaking. There's like another expression like benke no naki tokoro. It's like all these like stupid expressions, like, and like there's like ones like seki no yama, right? But like seki no yama I think means seippai, yeah. But like there's all these like literary expressions in Classroom Elite, like light novel, that even natives wouldn't know. So that's the thing with anime, is that it's actually extremely hard domain to master. So that probably explains why it took me so long to learn Japanese. I was also like doubting a little bit, because it's like I spent so much effort with Japanese, yet I still haven't reached like the perfection that I want. And I think that's because it's the hardest literary language to master, I ended up realizing, because it seems like across all domains, fantasy, sci-fi, military, historical, samurai, all across all these genres, there's like a bunch of words that you have to know. So in terms of the word requirement, you have to have a vocabulary of 30,000 to be able to master all domains of anime and light novels, right? And that's the reality, right? And that's far less than like the typical amount for like most literature, right? in other languages. So that's why like mastering anime, believe it or not, is actually harder than mastering French literature, than mastering Arabic, Quran literature, because the amount of words you need to know the amount of words you need to know to master those domains is actually a lot less. And that's because of Japanese, they just like to, not only do they like to invent new words, but they also like to add in archaic expressions, right? Super archaic literary terms, and they just like bust them out like crazy in anime. And that just makes the entire like anime genre just that much harder to master. So that's why like when I used anime as my only tool of Japanese, like I did not know what I was getting myself into. I was getting myself into like literally one of the hardest genres to master in any language. Like it wasn't just like the hardest genre to master in Japanese, right? Like no. Like by mastering all domains of anime, you're literally getting yourself into one of the hardest literary languages in existence. Because I asked ChatGPT this, like, okay, so what's the vocabulary requirement to master Spanish or French literature? It roughly falls under like 20,000 to maybe like 25,000 words, which is basically where like Attack on Titan is. So like, okay, like if you mastered Attack on Titan, like in Hunter type manga, like you're already on the level. You're like already in that level now. it's like what? I'm just like shocked. I'm like, dude. I mean, Attack on Titan uses like really hard vocabulary, but like for me, I've already mastered that domain, and I'm now like reaching into the new levels of basically anime difficulty, which is basically like Fate Zero, Ginga Eiyu Densetsu. Like I'm watching. I basically watched like the first season of Fate Zero, guys. Crazy, dude. You guys don't understand, bro. Crazy vocabulary. It's actually insane, bro. You guys like there's like I'm like there's a ton of words that I didn't know, and I was surprised because I was reading like Classroom Elite, and there's still words I didn't know, but like I wouldn't have to look up that much, right? They're like I knew basically most of the words, but it's like in Fate Zero, bro. Even though it being still an anime, bro, boom, like tons of words I didn't know. And I'm like, yeah, okay, this confirms that like, okay, this is why anime is like the hardest domain to master. Because it's like, just the breadth and the depth of vocabulary is like unmatched. Because, yeah, you just gotta know so many literary terms, so many archaic terms, so many, and plus it's like there's all these genres you want to master. Like if you want to master fantasy, right, like ReZero, you have to learn fantasy vocabulary. Then if you want to read Classroom Elite, you're gonna have to master like school and abstract concept, like psychological vocabulary, right? Like same with the Monogatari. Like Monogatari uses like a lot of abstract terms. And if you want to master like what Fate Zero has, like Fate Zero has a lot of historical vocabulary that you have to learn, and it's just like way too much. It's just way too much for the brain because it's like you have to learn all these different genres, and it's just nonsense. It's freaking nonsense, bro, right? And that's when I ended up realizing that like, yo, my Japanese is not perfect because I still have to learn like another 10,000 words to fully master all domains. And that's what I realized, like, when I stopped learning Japanese intensely after 2.5 years, I only knew, my vocabulary, if I were to put a rough estimate, it was like probably around like 20,000 words. But that was not enough for me to understand the high-end light novels and high-end anime, right? So even though I mastered most anime, it was not enough to master those high-end ones. And that's when I realized that I still had a lot of room for improvement. Because here's the thing, guys. I stopped using Anki after that, right? Because I just thought I graduated, Sotsugyo shita from Anki. But I had to bring Anki back in because when I was reading Kingdom, when I was reading Berserk, right? When I was reading like all these light novels, there's still like a lot of words I didn't know. And I still had to do like a lot of lookups. So I was like, okay, what's going on here? Like I thought I already mastered this language, right? But little did I know that when you actually go and watch the high-end vocabulary, like high-end anime, I was still suffering in comprehension. It seems that Monogatari series is like one of the hardest animes in terms of vocabulary. And when I watched it after I became like, after I thought I graduated from Japanese, it was still hard to understand. Like it was still hard. Like I was still watching Monogatari and I was like, yo, like I understood like most of the words, but it's like I was probably missing a lot of details. And it probably, so like, so even me, like I wasn't able to really enjoy the experience of Monogatari because I didn't have a high enough vocabulary. That's what I'm assuming. I'm gonna rewatch Monogatari series to confirm. But when I first watched it, I don't think I fully was able to appreciate the enjoyment of Monogatari because there's just so many archaic literary terms that were thrown out there in anime that they speak. It's like they're speaking a novel. Like when you watch like Ginga Eiyu Densetsu or when you watch like Fate Zero, they're literally speaking a novel. Like they're speaking written language. It's like weird. It's like it's not conversational at all. It's like they're just speaking like eloquent Shakespeare Japanese like all the time, like full blown out. And they don't even hesitate to throw in those literary terms, which makes it that much harder. So it's like imagine like someone talks like Shakespeare, but adds in like a bunch of new words in there that you don't know, that don't even exist in modern English. That's what it's like to master these freaking anime, guys. That's what it's like, bro. It's insane. It's like a never-ending cycle. So now, like, I realized that, like, okay, I'm gonna have to like increase my vocabulary by another 10,000 in order for me to actually fully master all domains of Japanese. Even though I mastered most domains, I'm able to read JoJo, like JoJo, anime like, Black Clover, Naruto, One Piece, Bleach, like simple shonen anime. I've mastered pretty much. Like if you throw me if you make me watch that, like I'm able to understand literally like everything, virtually everything. But it's like when you throw me into Fate Zero, throw me into freaking Legend of the Galactic Heroes. You throw me like you give me like a light novel like Re:Zero. Even for that, like that was still like there was still a lot of things that were missing. Like my ability was not complete yet. So that's why I decided to really pick back up Anki and basically start to focus on learning Japanese again. Because like I realized that there was a lot more to go. And that's the sad reality with an anime. Is like it's just the hardest. It's the hardest literary language to learn. So even though my vocabulary did surpass most natives, it wasn't enough to master all literary art, literary works of Japanese, right? So yeah, guys. So that's what I plan to do, guys. I plan to improve my Japanese by watching like super hard anime, right? Like I watched Ginga the Densetsu, but I dropped it. I think I probably dropped it because I wasn't understanding everything. I mean, here's the thing: when you're listening, you don't realize how much you don't understand. So everything was just washing over my ears. But like I need to rewatch AU Densetsu to like make sure like if it was really at that difficulty, because it was using like a lot of formal language, a lot of military, which I already did master. Like I've already mastered like most politics and military terms because I was reading Kingdom and it was heavy on that. And like Kingdom was like I was able to sort of internalize those terms. But it's like I need to rewatch Legend of Galactic Heroes to really make sure that like okay, if it was really at that level in terms of difficulty. So yeah, guys. But my Japanese is pretty good, but it's like it's nowhere near like perfection. There's just still so more to go, bro. There's still, and I think it's like I have like a final push, because it's like I still learned the domain specific words in all genres. There's still like a couple of new words that I need to learn, like a couple new archaic terms, a couple new literary terms that I need to refine, and then I'll be perfect, right? I mean, maybe not perfect, but I would have actually mastered, or at least have enough vocabulary to basically master all domains of Japanese word, which means that like if I were to pick up like a super hard light novel, I'll be able to read it without dictionary, like that type of level, right? Of course, there'll still be some words I might not know, but it's like because there's always new words to learn, but it's like you get to a point where it's like you read an entire novel, you understand it like 100%, and maybe there's only like 3 words you didn't know, that type of level, right? So yeah, guys. So I'm a little bit. I need to still grind a little bit more, but I'm really close, guys. But that's why I decided to resume back on my Japanese after taking like a 2-year break. Even though during those 2 years I was still like immersing, it wasn't intense, bro. It wasn't like I was spending like 6 hours a day. But I think now I'm gonna like try and level up my Japanese, because after like watching like hard anime and not understanding it like as much as I wanted to, and same with Re:Zero, like I would read a Re:Zero light novel like a year ago, and I was not understanding like all the details, bro. Like I was missing out on a lot. So I was like, okay, this is like probably a lack of my ability that I need to master. So yeah, guys, but hopefully it's go well.